suddenly die like it's been happening recently. And I think there's I've seen a few other people mention that there's problems with uploading, so it might be a YouTube glitch. Anyway, uh, before I start, I have the number 11 video with myself and my friend Neil MacDonald is just come out on his channel. I'll put the link below here so you can go into it. The second announcement is that I've removed all the videos to do with the Tuam Mother and Child Home from all my channels, including the documentary about that I made on it. And the reason for this is I'm having grave doubts that this actually happened. Now, I am not talking about the crimes committed by that we can verify committed when the Catholic Church had far too much power in Ireland, but I started about 6 months ago to have my doubts about the Tuam story when an individual I saw a video of his uh, from a mainstream TV channel talking about how he had experienced being a child victim of the nuns at Tuam, the mother and baby home. And I know this guy to be a Walter Mitty pure fantasist. He lives locally, and he is an unbelievable spoofer and liar. And I knew he was making it all up, but I wasn't going to discount the story based on just him. And now it's come out, and then later on, I saw somebody attacking John Waters over it, saying that John Waters was defending the bishops and all this. So just I looked at a video at what John was saying about it. I think it was to the Veritas group, who are a Catholic organization, and he made the point that where's the proof? Where's the proof of all these babies in the septic tank? And there wasn't any, and that really got me thinking. And now it's come out now that the woman who who is basically the person behind the whole Tuam scandal is now backtracking on her story, saying that she never said they were dumped into a septic tank. Well, I don't know if she said those words exactly because it's a while back now, but she definitely was allowed that mythology, if it is that, of the septic tank to to embellish her own hero status at the time. And now she's in the Irish Times saying, well, the story, I was misrepresented. I don't know about that. Uh, Either way, there's no proof that those 800 bodies are in that septic tank now. And I only took her word as a historian for it, and other people who stood by her. And now I'm not saying they're not there, but I'm not going to leave videos. I couldn't feel right about myself if I left videos up on my channels, endorsing the mainstream narrative of Tuam, if it turns out that it was a monumental lie just to further attack the Catholic Church in Ireland. So just wouldn't be ethical to do that. So taken those videos down. That's why they're gone if they're not there. If developments did come up in future where this did turn out to be true in the end, yeah, things would change then. But until then, I despise that phrase "no smoke without fire." That's generally used by pathological individuals, and my attitude is until it's been proven a person is completely innocent, or until it's been proven it's been made up or it's not true, and or unless there's like massive proof, like you had with Jimmy Savile, and then you can probably do it then. But in terms of something like that, I have to be honest that when I made I made those videos, I kind of didn't care if it hurt Catholics in Ireland. And I kind of feel bad about that now because there was an element of mean spirited. No, I wasn't mean spirited. It was more, I was genuinely outraged by the events as they were relayed in the mainstream media. I was genuinely horrified by them. And that place in Tuam is a very spooky and disturbing location. But there's also famine, typhoid graves there, and there was fellas executed during the War of Independence by the British Army there. So there's a lot of negative energy on the site anyway. But I just it's just that I don't want to be, you know, I don't want to have I don't want to have that out there if it's not true, because then it's just nastiness. It's just being shitty. So that's why they're down, and we wait for developments in the Tuam case. But as it stands, it looks like it's just another mythology of woke Ireland. Now, another thing today is that they've announced that we're locked down now till May here, an even stricter lockdown, and all the normies, most of them, I'd say 90% of them on the comments pages on places like Twitter and stuff, social media, are furious and outraged, and they're saying, "Oh, we will not stand for this. No way, we're not putting up with this." But they will, and they will, because I've seen what I've learned more than anything else is that most Irish people are cowards in the last year. They're cowards and they're terrified. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that they have no souls. When I say they have no souls, I mean they have no belief in purpose to their life than anything beyond day-to-day drudgery of survival. And that's why you have them cowering in supermarket aisles with 3 masks on their face if a perfectly healthy person comes 4 millimeters too close to them. And that's this is what I know it's not just here, but the Irish like to big themselves up as some kind of maverick race, the Fighting Irish, and we've never taken any shit off anyone. No, we take more shit than most countries have taken, and we're pretty much a disgrace in this way, the way we bottled it with the whole lockdown and the pandemic thing, and a lot of that had to do with the training we had gotten by. I don't buy this whole thing that the British Empire oppressed us and then the church oppressed us. I think that's a trite cliche, the likes of morons like Sinead O'Connor come out with. But I think it's more of a case of we've been made soft and frightened. I think there's a lot of case. When I read books, and I love social and local histories, and when I read local histories of all over Ireland, urban and rural, I'm always struck by the integrity of the people. They didn't have a pot to piss in, a lot of them, but there was a tremendous integrity there, and a bravery as well. And that's been, affluence has removed that from the Irish people, you know, that's removed it from us, and it's made them soft and frightened. And there's a particular kind of quite nauseating, frightened kind of Paddy, where he's a male and he's middle age, and he's absolutely petrified of the coronavirus in the most the most terrified ninny manner. He literally is sitting in front of the TV waiting for his latest fear programming indoctrination. And sadly, I would say that's probably the majority of Irish males today. And that's that's a very easy population to control. The outraged coward, and like I said, I always said, there's nothing more despicable and weaselly, and just horrible than a weak, frightened little man. If you know anyone in your life who has the tendency to be a weak, frightened little man, get rid of them. Just get rid of them, because they will be if anything goes wrong, they will be the first one to knife you in the back. Even if they're your best friend, they would be. If you did something illegally, they'll be the first one to call the police, just in case that they didn't get blamed. This is why they succumb to things like criminal blackmailing so easily, and they get these people out, these weasels out of your life, and these cowards are everywhere. Unfortunately, these cowards are everywhere, and I don't mind someone being afraid of a pandemic if it's real, but they're not afraid of the pandemic What they want is a sense of virtue over others, a belief that they are superior to others, and therefore the prevailing orthodoxy must be superior to me, so therefore I am a vanguard of the superior orthodoxy. Now, this brings us to the woke again. There was the grandfather of all this stuff, all this critical theory, and all this modern, Western Marxism, and all the things that the woke and the SJWs and Black Lives Matter represent. The father of them, ironically, is a white European guy, and he was an Italian by the name of Antonio Gramsci. I think that's how it's pronounced. He was Sardinian, Gramsci, and he came up with this idea of a kind of a cultural hegemony. And when he was thrown in prison by the Italian fascist government, and while he was in prison, he wrote this essay, which is probably the most influential essay in the world on this cultural hegemony. In West, that next to probably Darwin's Origin of Species, except we don't know about it because it basically just filters through academic circles and is then used to sort of program students in universities. But he quite rightly believed and figured out that the Marxism as an economic theory, which is what the Communist Manifesto and Das Kapital are both, they're economic philosophies, that was not going to be the thing that would make communism happen. He had studied at the University of Turin the the cultural factors which keep what he said the bourgeoisie society intact. So therefore, cultural factors is what kept the prevailing orthodoxy in power, and that's absolutely true. Like you see that in Ireland at the moment, that we have a cultural hegemony of the Late Show. They get their booster of fear every Friday night whenever it's on. Watching that, they get their booster of fear watching the evening news of how many died of COVID, and you see that's an example of cultural hegemony. And Antonio Gramsci, his theory was that if you could get Marxist ideology into the cultural hegemony, you would fundamentally alter the society towards Marxist thinking. He died after years of imprisonment that led to his poor health, and he became something of a patron saint among Marxist academics, and particularly the critical theorists of things like the Frankfurt School and the New School in New York, who created ideas such as critical race theory, which believes that just by their very existence, all white people are racists. From the moment they step out of the womb, a white child is racist. And the critical race theorist, in order to demolish Western hegemony, cultural hegemony, has to convince a parents who are giving birth that when the baby is removed, comes out of the mother's womb, and the doctor cuts the umbilical cord, when the two parents, the two white parents, look at this baby, they don't see the continuation of their family legacy, that their heritage of or even a union of their love, or the result of 1,000 loves, is like they use that kind of romantic term. When they look at their newborn child in the eyes, the first thing they see is a racist who has to be fixed. And that's the central tenet of critical race theory. Gramsci, Gramsci, I can't really pronounce it, had successfully understood that if you could apply this to every aspect of life, then you would achieve the change needed to bring in a Marxist dictatorship, the early versions of a sort of a technocratic dictatorship that we're heading towards at the moment. So the thing to do this was to actually make these ideas central to the actual culture. So therefore, they talk about the pandemic or the scamdemic, and they talk about the new normal. And the new normal is about training the people through fear. So they see their neighbors not as, and this would be critical health theory if you would give it a term. They see their neighbors as bags of contaminations and diseases, and their family members, and they look at their own children and their own loved ones as a bag of disease. And this is why the woke left have embraced the pandemic so much, because they've already been well doctrinated through things like critical in ecological theory, which would be the environmental movement and the Green Party and the Green Agenda, that somehow that the purpose that the world will fail if I don't do what a watermelon, green on the outside, red on the inside, tells me what to do regarding procurement of the laws of thermodynamics in order to keep myself and my family alive. So therefore, you know, they will build a house that's set. I'll give you. I always said the example of that was the Joe Swift's Gardener's World climate change garden, built 20 years ago in London, where they were talking about, oh, Joe Swift and build a climate change garden, like talks like that, and he goes, we're going to build a climate change garden. Now we've got to get out all the soil and all the grass, because there's now going to be no water in the future. And for a climate change garden, we've got to put in plants that are good for these increased temperatures and less water rainfall, and that will be mangoes and oranges and palm trees. Now that was 20 years ago. Those things probably died of frostbite 15 years ago, all those plants. But that was critical environmental theory. And this is everything, and you have critical musical theory. So you took like the bands like Rage Against the Machine and these these kinds of bands, and Massive Attack, Muse, and they're part of critical music theory. And so you this is where, in the environmental thing, you would have Greta Thunberg. She's creating a family hegemony, that middle class families, in order to, they must see the Greta in all their families. So they must aspire to make their daughter Greta. So if the middle class, and this extends to things like a complete demolition of these things, critical race theory, and having middle class woke parents looking at their child coming out of the womb and seeing a filthy racist who needs to be punished isn't enough. Now they have to demolish their genders. They have to the critical race theory will only finally rid Western society if they demolish us down to the soul level. And that begins with things like the very sense of identity. And this is why they're encouraging parents. And some fucking idiot came in yesterday and said, not all parents of autistic kids want to transgender them. I never fucking said that. Don't be putting words in my mouth, attempted flyby gaslighter. What I'm saying is that these fashionable, woke, easily impressed parents are encouraging their autistic children to to transition, or telling them they can have periods, because this will actually make the fear of confronting an autistic child less, because these people don't have a spiritual identity. One thing I have noticed is that in Ireland, in going to small rural Ireland communities, there are people with Down syndrome, and they're not excluded from the community. When we had pubs, the guys and women with Down syndrome would drink in the pubs with the locals. They would hang out with them. They would go to sports with them. Yes, they had Down syndrome and they had all the resultant issues with that. But on top of the support they received from the government and the community, they also received a kind of a spiritual support from the locals, in that he or she has Down syndrome, but if they want to go to the pub, let them. This kind of thing. As very few countries you would see that in, except Ireland. It's one of the things that make me proud to be Irish, is that we didn't hide our disabled people away. But that comes directly from, J.R.R. Tolkien was very fond of Ireland, although he didn't like the Irish language. He hated it, and he had no interest in Irish mythology. But he visited here a lot, and he once told an American academic that the landscape of Ireland is evil, and the only thing that holds it back is the goodness and kindness of the Irish people. And he was talking about things like that. And the root of that goodness and kindness at the time was a strong Christian faith. Okay, spiritual faith. Him being a devout Catholic would have liked that about the Ireland at this time. And he visited here many times from the 50s into the 70s. And that spiritual faith is gone now. It's been taken away. And even as a pagan, I find that a great shame because I'd rather have people have an Abrahamic spiritual faith than no spiritual faith. And they have no spiritual faith now. And this explains the terrified ninny cowering in the corner of a supermarket aisle if someone comes over near them. I've seen it with my own eyes. Grown men in supermarkets like this with. I've seen it with my own fucking eyes. That's not an exaggeration, and that's having no soul, no spiritual identity to them. And that's the whole point of this critical theory, is to demolish the human being at the fundamental level and replace the importance of the spiritual structural foundation of the person and replace it with you're just DNA. And a DNA is just programming. And this is one of the reasons I hate the fucking New Age, because they talk about, I'm a DNA robot. I'm a programmable DNA. No, you're not. You're analog. Your electrical functions in your body are analog signals. They're not digital. You're not a robot. You're not a programmable robot. You're more like a magnetic tape machine. And, yeah, man, I'm a programmable robot. I fucking hate when New Agers say that shit. And that's all part of the thing that you just meet. And you just meet with zeros and ones. And they're getting now very, very close to societies where there's just that. Like I said, most people under 30 today are just basically vegetables. A lot of them can't have a conversation, even about anything. They can't do it, especially if they've gone to university. And you start trying to talk to them about like something on TV or a movie or something, and they go, you can see it in their eyes. So this is the thing they call conversation. And they're all NPCs. Not all, of course, not. But they've been made NPCs. Like I told you, that fantastic thread on Reddit a few years back where I was talking about the NPCs and the no internal monologue. And one guy said, I used to have one until I went to university to got my PhD. And that's what they've created. And that's critical education theory. That's why there's so many people go to university these days. It's like the university and college used to be for the middle classes up until about 1999. Now everybody goes to uni, and it means nothing. It's having a degree now means nothing, absolutely nothing. And that's why that's why they built these universities. That's why they took technical colleges and turned them into universities, or took regional colleges and made them into universities and institutes of technology, because they wanted everybody getting a third level education, because they wanted everyone indoctrinated with critical education theory. And it's not necessarily in the curriculum. It'll be things like a tampon machine in the men's toilets, which they've installed at Yale and some other top universities. That's enough. Yeah, you're in college. You don't have to have someone saying men can have periods too. All you have to do is put a Tampax machine in a male toilet, and subconsciously he'll associate men, toilets, tampons. Now, we also have critical pedophile theory, and this is the belief that, they'll never admit this, but this is what's out there, that the sexualization of children is one more way to demolish the Western family and the Western foundation of culture and society in villages and towns and communities. And so therefore, they're terribly concerned about gender politics and gender identity. And this is to get male perverts into women's toilets so they can molest 10-year-old girls in the female toilets. It's happened lots of time, and that's what it's really about. Now, I know there's people who are real transgenders and do need to transition and all that, but the reason why the system, the collective, the psychopathic control grid wants this is for that reason. It's the ultimate demolition of Western society. And this is going to be hard for me to say this, and it's going to be hard for you to hear this, but they won. We look around you, it's a fucking cesspool. A cesspool of cowards and meat robots. And wokeism is taking over like a mind virus the rest of them. And the pandemic has been the final silver bullet to do it, and they're getting it done. Hence why I've been talking about the parallel society and making our own culture away from this. And getting away from this notion that the normies are going to wake up. The normies are going to rise up. One day they will have enough. It's not going to fucking happen. When you see a guy in his 30s who's in prime physical shape and a fully working immune system in a supermarket, when someone comes 2 millimeters too close to him, going, it's over. It's over. When you have parents who look at their baby child in the crib and they go, my beautiful little, that, it's such a shame, but my child is a racist. Now that goes right back to original sin of the Christians, and that the Abrahamics, that we all have original sin. And you see, this is one of the reasons the Abrahamic thing, it has made this very easy. Is things like circumcision, about in Islam and Judaism, has made this very easy to attack children, to get them focused on the sexual elements of children. And I'm not putting those religions down in that way. I'm just saying this is what you've inherited, and also the battering of children in Ireland by Catholic priests, the Christian Brothers and all that, and the buggering of Protestant boys in Protestant schools, by the older boys and this kind of thing. And that's the law that is rooted in in those concepts. And this is why the parallel society is the only thing. Well, I won't say the only thing. I wouldn't never have that level of hubris or arrogance about anything. But for me, it's the only thing I can see right now that will give us any kind of solace from the ending of the Kali Yuga and the fulfilling of the babe's prophecy. That this is an evil time. It is an evil time. And central to this is what you could probably call critical sentient theory. You will notice that all your leftist, woke, SJW friends are not in this for the long game. Are not in this for. I was talking to one guy who works for some company that he delivers washing machines, and he says that he was telling somebody online that all these washing machines that are made in China are falling apart after 2 years. They're junk. The first thing this programmed piece of leftist meat jumps in and goes, your entire post was nothing but Chinese racism, anti-Chinese racism. Now, when you have them programmed that well, there's no hope. And lots agreed with him. And all the guy said was, everything made in China is junk. It looks great. It works fantastic for the first year. But things like, the components start to rot, the solder joints go, the metal starts to decay and break down, the motor winding brushes that fall apart. They're phenomenal for 2 years, where they should be lasting 20 years. And you could say it's planned obsolescence. It's that, but it's also shoddy workmanship. It's shoddy workmanship, and hidden behind a glossy, bright, shiny exterior. And that's the first thing the guy said to him was, your complaints about Chinese washing machines is just racism against Chinese. And that's what college had done to this moron. Now, this is critical sentient absence. That they make them, all your left-wing friends can't have a long or an in-depth conversation. Everything is reactionary rhetoric. Like I see here in Ireland, if anyone makes any kind of cogent comment about the effects of the lockdown, the first thing they go, how are you, Gemma? How are you, Gemma? And they think they're really clever. And they think they're really fucking clever. And half of the ones who are now screaming on the Irish social media things about, I'm not doing this lockdown, it's too much, it's gone too far. 3 months ago would have been going, how are you, Gemma, you conspiracy theorist? These animals don't have the ability, and they are animals, they don't have the ability to remember anything, just like the ones who tore down statues last summer don't remember doing that. You will find your left wing liberal woke friends do not have an absence of sentient uh, structure, and that everything is quick rhetoric buzzwords. They'll sprinkle that racist shit on everything, in order to not engage in debate. And they're not redeemable. So you have to remember this. They're not redeemable. You can say to yourself, if things get bad enough, they will not fall for this shit anymore. No, no, not maybe with a person who grew up with like a traditional old sort of what you'd call liberal or leftist mindset, which I was probably that myself. I'm sure I was. They are redeemable because they're now called extreme right wing extremists for having left wing opinions that were left wing 25 years ago. Now these ones that you have today, they're irredeemable. There's no hope for them. It's because their sentient processes have been switched off as part of this NPC state that they're in. So if you're sitting there thinking, my friend is a total SJW lefty, all it will take is for something to go wrong, and he'll switch over to my side. No, they will still be like that. They'll still be like that. We've heard stories of women raped by Muslim immigrants and then apologizing to the Muslim community for being a white woman who walked into their neighborhood. That's what we're up to with these people. That's the generation these critical theorists have raised. And anyone under 30, 35 are all like this. Now, I'm not saying that she should have went in and said all Muslims are nasty. Of course, she shouldn't have done that. But she should have been aware that that who she raped her had cultural foundations in that. Just think like Tara Rush and all this stuff, which is real and exists. Just like the mafia exists in Western communities. And I mean, there's things. Every group has a pathological element to it. But there's no hope for these people. There's no hope. They would literally. You see all these satirical things, but these memes. But the thing is that they're not satire. They're how these people are. And there's no hope except for people who are in our tribe and like mind, like us, to raise their kids at home and say to them, don't listen to your college professor, your school teacher. He doesn't really know if it's true or not. He's only repeating what a book that he gave to him. Always use your own experience in life, that kind of thing. That's very simple. In this parallel society, we have to forego or at least develop a very strict relationship with academia. As it stands, among the woke and the normies, there's an unconditional love of academia. And they will, for instance, the most powerful man at the moment in Ireland is that guy, Professor Luke O'Kelly, who's an immunologist at Trinity College in Dublin. He is a superstar with the normies. He's never off Irish TV, and he's a tosser. That's the only way to describe him. You wouldn't go for a pint with him. He comes across as a total dickhead. He's a kind of like a nerd and a geek that's gone to his head, and they unconditionally worship him they see him as a living god. He's the new Bishop John Charles McQuaid, the bishop in Ireland in the 50s that had unbelievable power here. And the same people back in the 50s who would have said, I think the Catholic Church are hiding some dirty secrets. I think those bishops are all fucking women and stuff like that, but while telling the rest was we can't have condoms. Well, the same kind of people are saying, Jerry. They would have been the same ones saying, you're fucking easy. That's not true. They're great. The Church are great. They're great men. And now they're going, Professor Luke ONeill is a great man, a great scientist. The same archetype is now continued onto that because nothing has changed. The same sort of like putrid demographic of Irish culture that supported the likes of John Charles McQuaid in the past. And the modern, that's not just because Tume was wrong. We know that the Magdalene laundries and all the rest was real, and supported that. Where the same once a day, stay at home, save lives, wear your mask. Those types. Professor Luke O'Neill's going to save us, that kind of thing. Now, Luke O'Neill, like these types, has an inherent hypocrisy in them because this is the guy who was Mr. Lockdown and Mr. Social Distances. And in the Sunday Independent last week, he was talking about how Irish farmers have incredible immune systems because they're exposed to the actual things like manure, animals, and being outside in the muck and dirt in all weathers. While being on TV and radio non-stop, telling us to stay indoors to protect our immune system. He doesn't even know what he believes. He's just issuing a rhetoric that's indirect, and he's the greatest scientist in Ireland, and he telling people that staying indoors, wearing a mask and washing all the time will fight the coronavirus, and in his next breath tells us that Irish farmers have incredible immune systems because they're out in the muck, dirt, shit and filth and not socially distancing. And people are still listening to this fool. This is a whack job or an extreme hypocrite. Either he knows that he fucking knows that the whole thing of staying at home is the worst thing you can do for your immune system, or unless he's doing this for an ulterior motive outside that of science and public health policy, that he's fulfilling a political or a commercial agenda regarding COVID that he does not apply to Irish farmers. Now, this is while I sit there and I read this and my jaw hits the fucking floor, I know that if I go out to the average normie and say, this guy Luke O'Neill told you to stay indoors, maintain social distancing and constantly keep yourself sterilised in a sterile environment. Do you know in the Sunday Independent last week, he had an article talking about the incredible immune systems of farmers because they're outdoors, put with their hands up cows' arses, shoveling muck, covered in oily tractors, out in all weathers, eating their sandwiches, just after a quick clean-up in the field after they've been digging and shoveling and sweating and everything, and shoveling hay, and doing all the things you can't do right now. And do you not find that contradictory? And the 90% of the Irish will go like this. Huh? 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 Sure. Just like they went like that when the golfing gala in Clifton happened, and all the politicians, including a Supreme Court judge and an EU High Court judge and an EU commissioner, were there with no masks at the height of the pandemic. And he said it to them. That proves that they know there's no pandemic. That's why they were at the golfing gala dinner. They know it's not real, and they were going, sure. Just like the RT retirement party, where the RT spooks to say, we don't get money from the Clinton Foundation. No, they don't get money from the Clinton Foundation. What they do is they take their journalists over to Washington and places like that to give them little kind of working holidays and experience with the courtesy of the Clinton Foundation. It's not money handed over. And those articles where he said, we can prove we got no money from the Clinton Foundation. No, your individual journalists don't get money either. They get looked after. Educational trips. But anyway, the RT party, the retirement party for somehow bag, and all the people that from the news show is saying that we should stay at home all day with no masks, all hugging and everything. And he says to them, doesn't that prove that they don't believe there's a pandemic either? Sure. That's 90% of them. So don't fool yourself. And I'm sure it's the same in your country. Don't fool yourself that because now the same ones who were like 6 months ago screaming, putting up their quarantine picture on social media, don't fool yourself that they're all suddenly waking up now and seeing this bullshit for what it is. No, they're not. They're angry, but they will still won't do anything. because these kind of thing are social safety valves. That's what this is. But this, I mean, if people had sentient awareness and we had an accountable media, after that comment by Luke O'Neill that farmers have the best immune systems in Ireland, for all the reasons he against what he said would save us from the coronavirus, i.e., fucking contact with germs and microbes and bacteria. If he should not appear ever again in the media. He should not have any credibility as a scientist. Because he's either lying or he's got some kind of dissociative personality disorder, where there's one side of him where he has a corona partition in his brain, where it's like he has these one set of rules, and on the other side of his brain, he has an actual reality science thing regarding, the building of immune systems through acquisition of bacteria and microbes and stuff like we all know is true. And the two partitions are separate, and even if if that's dissociation. Okay, he has a psychiatric disorder, a personality disorder, so he shouldn't be held up as a great expert. If that's not the case, then he's lying. He's lying on behalf of the COVID lobby. And then we have to ask a question: is who are the COVID lobby, and why is he lying on behalf of them? Now, of course, this video is not for you morons out there who, how are you, Gemma? Because you don't, or Leo's ledge, just a fucking ledge. He wore his fucking white coat to fight the COVID. You fucking ledge. No, not them. Fuck them. They're gone. They're useless. This is for those Irish people who still have a sentient processing in their brain. And Luke O'Neill completely contradicted everything about his COVID narrative with that statement in the Sunday Independent, and he's still being held up as the crown prince of Irish science. And I want to know why. I want to know why he's fully aware that an immune system is the best way to develop that is through connection and bacteria. And of course, I understand if there is a pandemic and we know that COVID is real, of course, we protect people who are vulnerable, the elderly, people with HIV, cancer, newborn babies, that kind of thing. Fair enough. But anyone else capable of being like a farmer, which also includes a builder, a construction worker, which, what have they done at the moment? They've stopped construction projects in Ireland to fight the COVID. When, if they wanted to fight the fucking COVID, according to Luke O'Neill, this partition of his brain, the science partition of his brain, as opposed to the COVID propaganda partition of his dissociative brain, if that's what the case is there, they should be opening up the building sites and getting the farmers out there and getting the people working with any kind of high bacterial contact type jobs to build their immune systems to fight the COVID. But they're not. They're putting everything in the vaccine. A vaccine should be the last port of call. I am not an anti-vaxxer, but I fucking don't trust this vaccine at all. And I'm also I'm not comfortable with like having dead babies injected into me and chimpanzees. And, but having said that, I'm not an anti-vaxxer by nature. But that should be the last port of call. The first port of call is protecting the vulnerable and improving the immune system of the general healthy population through herd immunity. But Luke O'Neill said that because he knows most people will go, stay home, save lives.